Philos has exported its membrane modules to different locations, including China, Canada, and Europe. By providing solutions for wastewater treatment and preventing air pollution, it aims to earn recognition as a maker of eco-friendly products.
저희 필로스의 중장기 목표는 에너지, 환경, 바이오, 의료 등 고부가치 분야에 최적화된 멤브레인 제품을 지속적으로 개발하고 상품화하여 글로벌 시장에서 인정받는 기술 기반 기업으로 성장하는 것입니다. 특별히 저희 필로스는 멤브레인 기술에 관련한 솔루션 프로바이더 역할을 수행하는 것을 목표로 기술력 있는 해외 기업들과 공동 연구를 통해 더 넓은 응용 시장을 개척하기 위해 노력하겠습니다.
Philos has made utmost effort to develop technologies that can bring about significant changes to the environment. And we look forward to its remarkable growth in the near future.
drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
In our headlines on this Friday, August 1st, here in South Korea. U.S. tariffs on all imports will be in effect starting next Thursday. That is August 7th. And for South Korea, this means 15% tariffs on its exports headed for the American market. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and his U.S. counterpart Marco Rubio hold constructive talks and have reportedly started coordinating for their leaders' summit. Meanwhile, South Korean exports expand for the second month in a row in July, gaining 5.9% on year, driven by cars, chips and ships. Country-specific U.S. tariffs are poised to take effect from next Thursday, that is August 7th. This is according to an order inked by the U.S. leader back on Thursday. Our Park Junan starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday signed an executive order for the new reciprocal tariffs that will go into effect on August 7th. The imposition of new tariffs was pushed back from August 1st to 7th to allow Customs and Border Protection the necessary time to implement the new tariff system.
But I do know that the trade team has been working around the clock to try to be in correspondence with as many countries as possible. But if they haven't heard from us yet, they will in the form of a letter or an executive order by midnight tonight.
South Korea on Wednesday secured a last-minute deal to lower the reciprocal tariff from 25% to 15%. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the agreement allows significant investment for the U.S. and historic market access to American goods.
And South Korea will pay a 15% tariff rate, including 15% on autos, while providing historic market access to American goods like autos and rice. Korea will purchase $100 billion in American energy by 2028. And the centerpiece of this deal is that South Korea has agreed to invest $350 billion at the president's direction to revitalize American industry.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, speaking on CNBC, described the agreement between South Korea and the U.S. as a very good one. Bessent said South Korea was a special case because they had an election, a new government. So they were not in the position to fully negotiate. And they presented a very good offer. President Trump moved the offer up a bit, and we reached a very good agreement. On the same day, the White House posted a photo of President Trump with the South Korean U.S. trade delegation to social media, where it called the deal historic. Trump also took to social media to say details on South Korea's investments will be formalized during a visit to the White House by President Lee Jae-myung, set to take place in the next 2 weeks. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
And Mr. Trump has also touted his tariff deals with a number of other U.S. trade partners as well. Our Ising-jae has details.
Just hours before reciprocal tariffs were set to take effect, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Thursday that Washington had made some more trade deals. Speaking at an executive order signing ceremony at the White House, Trump told reporters that his trade deals are making trillions of dollars for his country, highlighting what he described as significant economic wins. Trump later announced a 25% tariff for India, 20% for Taiwan, and a 30% rate for South Africa. Meanwhile, when asked about failure to reach a trade deal with Canada, Trump addressed speculation, linking the breakdown to Canada's push for recognition of Palestinian statehood.
No, I didn't like what they said, but, that's their opinion. I didn't like that. Not a deal breaker, but we haven't spoken to Canada today.
However, shortly afterwards, the White House announced that Canada's tariff rate will be raised from 25% to 35%. The White House said the higher tariffs are in response to continued inaction and retaliation, adding that Trump found it necessary to increase the duties to effectively address the existing emergencies. The Brazilian government on Thursday slammed the Trump administration's decision to impose a 50% tariff on its imports, calling it an unfair measure, and warned of possible retaliation if no resolution is reached. However, Brazil's Finance Minister Fernando Haddad told reporters that the tariff plan is not as bad as expected, adding that the tariffs will also do harm to the American people as it will drive up prices in the U.S. Meanwhile, the Brazilian government cited data from the American Chamber of Commerce in Brazil, noting that 694 Brazilian products exported to the U.S., making up 45% of total exports, are exempt from the tariffs. The new 50% tariffs are expected to impact roughly 35.9% of Brazil's exports to the U.S. Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Thursday that her government had secured a 90-day extension to work on a trade deal, which will pause new tariffs.
We remain as we are, and it's 90 days to keep talking, holding dialogue, and building a long-term agreement.
Sheinbaum says the extension averted the 30% tariffs that were scheduled to take effect on Friday. She added that the new extension will also allow for Mexico to be exempt from the 25% tariffs imposed by President Trump earlier this year in response to the fentanyl crisis. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And findings show Korea's exports expanded for the second month in a row in July, gaining 5.9% on year, driven by cars, ships and chips. Our correspondent Moon Jae-young covers the latest trade numbers.
South Korea's exports rose for the second consecutive month in July, thanks to robust demand for chips, automobiles and ships, despite the impact of U.S. tariffs. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Friday, the value of exports last month amounted to over $60.8 billion, up nearly 6% compared to the previous year. This marked the highest ever for any July, setting record figures for the second consecutive month. The main contributor to this growth was semiconductors, the country's top export engine. Outbound shipments of chips rose more than 31% year-on-year, setting a record high for any July, backed by an increase in fixed prices of memory chips and strong demand for high-value products such as HBM and DDR5.
It seems true that there were movements to pre-secure inventory in areas like semiconductors and bioproducts before tariff impositions. Even if the increase in chip exports was initially due to advanced purchases, the current trend appears to be driven by robust demand, and we expect exports will not suddenly drop.
He added that the sector is expected to deliver a strong performance throughout the year on the growth of the AI market since Korean companies manufacture high-value chips that U.S. firms cannot make. In terms of automobiles, outbound shipments rose nearly 9% thanks to strong performances in the EU, Latin America, and the CIS. But auto exports to the U.S. dropped more than 1%, with shipments of EVs plummeting nearly 98% due to U.S. tariffs. The Trade Ministry says the Korean auto industry avoided the worst-case scenario with Thursday's trade deal between Seoul and Washington, which reduced U.S. tariffs on Korean cars to 15% from 25%, the same rate for cars from Japan and Europe. Ship exports spiked, marking the fifth consecutive month of year-on-year increases, driven by robust demand for high-value ships such as LNG tankers. On the other hand, machinery exports plunged more than 17%, and steel exports dropped nearly 3% due to U.S. tariffs. Regionally, exports to the U.S. went up more than 1%, but it marked the first time, at least since the start of last year, that the country came in third place after China and ASEAN. While exports to the EU, India, and CIS nations rose, those to China dropped 3% on sluggish demand for petrochemical products and wireless communications equipment. Imports grew 0.7% to $54.2 billion, resulting in a trade surplus of $6.61 billion. 문지영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and his American counterpart Marco Rubio have reaffirmed their commitment to North Korea's denuclearization. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Seoul and Washington's top diplomats reaffirmed their cooperation on handling a nuclear North Korea and began planning a top-level summit expected within 2 weeks. On Thursday local time, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met in Washington, D.C., marking their first official talks since the Lee Jae-myung administration took office in early June. According to their respective officers, the two officials discussed the South Korea-U.S. alliance and broader security issues in the region. Seoul's foreign ministry says they exchanged views on North Korea, agreed on its complete denuclearization, with the two officials deeming it necessary to strengthen cooperation on Pyongyang. They also agreed to enhance trilateral relations with Japan based on the Seoul-Washington alliance. The U.S. State Department's readout further expressed serious concern over North Korea's growing military ties with Russia and said Cho and Rubio both committed to the full implementation of international sanctions against Pyongyang. The statement also positioned trilateral cooperation with Tokyo as deterrence against regional threats, as well as noting the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Cho and Rubio welcomed the sudden conclusion of trade negotiations by finance and trade officials the day before, and pledged to cooperate on supply chains and emerging technologies. In particular, Seoul emphasized a third pillar of the partnership in advanced technologies alongside security and trade cooperation. Given that security issues were not substantially addressed in the trade negotiations as a so-called package deal, continued discussions are expected on alliance modernization. The term refers to adjusting the role and scope of the Korea-US alliance in line with changing strategic conditions and as Washington presses allies to contribute more towards their own security. The summit between Presidents Lee and Trump could serve as a starting point, with a potential 2+2 ministerial meeting to follow. Speaking with reporters after their meeting, the Korean foreign minister said he and Rubio held constructive talks and have started coordinating for the Leaders' Summit. Trump declared the previous day that a meeting would be held within 2 weeks. Separately, Cho requested Washington's support and cooperation for South Korea's hosting of this year's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in October, having sent an invitation to President Trump to attend the leaders' meeting. Rubio responded that he was well aware of this and would actively consider the request. 오수영, Arirang News.
4 weeks was decimated.
President Lee Jae-myung believes South Korea's survival depends on balanced regional growth. Remarks to this end were shared during a meeting with the heads of 17 cities and provinces at the Yongsan presidential office earlier on this Friday. To take a listen.
수도권보다는 지방에 더 인센티브를 지급하자. 똑같이가 아니라 더 많은 지원을 해야 비로소 균형을 조금이라도 유지할 수 있다는 생각을 앞으로 국가 정책 결정이나 예산 재정 배분에서도 이런 원칙을 최대한 강화해 나가려고 합니다.
The president also urged local governments to strengthen public safety measures, calling these efforts the state's top responsibility. Likewise, today's talks touched upon disaster response strategies and ways to boost domestic consumption. The former presidential office, Cheong Wa Dae, has closed its gates to the public. The closure follows the Lee Jae-myung administration's plan to move the top office back to Cheong Wa Dae from Yongsan. The former Yoon Suk-yeol administration had opened Cheong Wa Dae up to the public back in May 2022. Since then, some 7 million people have made their way to the grounds of the Blue House. Also, foot traffic surged after the new administration shared intentions to return to Cheong Wa Dae after the June 3rd election. The government is welcoming public opinion on APEC-related promotion strategies as well as infrastructure and service proposals. Now, those interested can share their thoughts online starting today until August 31st by clicking on the banner titled KPop on the websites of the Office for Government Policy Coordination, the Foreign Ministry, or APEC 2025 Korea. This campaign follows Prime Minister Kim Min-seok's call for public communication in preparation for the annual economic meeting of 21 states that will take place in Gyeongju on October 31st to November 1st. Korean shamanism is expanding its presence on screens big and small through animations and movies amid growing interest in its practice and more. My colleague Choi Soo-young files this report.
Set in South Korea, K-pop Demon Hunters follows a popular girl group that protects the human world from evil spirits while uncovering a boy group of Grim Reapers known as 저승사자. The Netflix original animation has become the most viewed original animated movie ever, with its soundtrack also topping the Billboard single charts. Last year, the Korean film Exhuma drew an audience of over 10 million at home and became a hit in Asia and North America, fueled by themes such as feng shui and shamanic rituals. Today, one of the hottest themes in K-content is K-shamanism, or K-musok in Korean, a traditional belief system incorporating rituals, divination, and faith in spirits and deities. With 1,000 years of history, Korean shamanism is a folk tradition where shamans, or mudang, guide people by praying for good fortune and driving away misfortune.
Shamanism exists in many parts of the world, but in Korea, it is unique because of the strong role of mudang. Their traditional music, costumes, and performances have deeply influenced Korean folk arts, giving Korean shamanism a distinct cultural and artistic character.
Unlike the Western view that defines the human world as good and the spirit world as evil, Korean shamanism sees shamans as mediators between the two, a belief that gives K-musok its unique power.
Western occult stories focus on exorcists, while K-pop Demon Hunters shows a more Eastern view. Luni, a half-hunter spirit, and Chinu, a Grim Reaper, reveal human qualities, moving beyond the simple divide of good and evil. Even Hollywood now borrows from Asian values, avoiding absolute dualism, showing how Eastern philosophy is shaping occult content.
Korean shamanism's power as a cult content comes from its cultural freshness rather than religion.
Korea is not tied to a single religion, allowing shamanism to keep its own identity alongside others. Unlike Japan, where cultural images were long ago exhausted by Japonism, Korea's shamanism remains fresh, offering untagged images that enrich today's content.
K-muso content is diversifying and becoming a key icon of K-culture with growing potential. Cheong, Arirang News.
And staying on the cultural front, the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art is offering those interested the chance to indulge in 100 years of Korean art starting from the early 1900s. Our Pyongyang was there.
100 years of modern and contemporary Korean art, now in one place. The National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Gwacheon is offering a rare panoramic look at a century of Korean art in an exhibition so large that the museum has separated it into two parts: Korean Modern and Contemporary Art 1 and 2. Part 1 covers the early 20th century, a period marked by Korea's rapid modernization, colonial occupation, and national division. Part 2 picks up after the Korean War and traces the evolution of Korean art through post-war reconstruction, industrialization, and democratization. Together, they feature more than 250 key works by over 100 artists, offering a rare panoramic look at a century of Korean art. Visitors say the opportunity to view both exhibitions together is a rewarding experience.
I've been waiting for part 2 because I love modern and contemporary art. I actually saw part 1 of the exhibition before, and I really liked how it was divided by time period. It made things easy to follow. Personally, I love the transition from figurative to abstract art during this era, so it was great to see works by artists like Yoo Young-guk and Lee Sung-ja all in one place.
Both exhibitions have sections called the Artist Room, dedicated to showcasing works by renowned artists such as Kim Hwan-gi and Yoon Hyung-gun. Another highlight is a section that re-examines under-recognized figures. This section focuses on female modernist artists. These women weren't part of major art groups or ideologies, but rather, they explored their own unique styles. Their works add a rich new layer to the male-dominated history of Korean contemporary and modern art. The exhibition closes with the debut of Sternbound No. 23, a major installation by contemporary artist Lee Bul. Suspended in air with steel, mirror, and film components, the futuristic piece explores themes of technology, the human body, and utopia.
There's growing interest in Korean culture both at home and abroad, but not many chances to explore the history of Korean art. We hope this exhibition gives visitors a clear, step-by-step look at how Korean art has evolved over the past century.
By presenting parts 1 and 2 side by side, MMCA Gwacheon allows visitors to follow a full arc of Korea's modern artistic transformation, from the days of colonization to modern global expression. The museum says it plans to keep the dual exhibitions running for at least 2 years. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
And here in Seoul, the city's renowned light show is illuminating its summer nights for the very first time and will continue to do so until next Sunday, that is August 10th. Our Park Hyo-bin has a glimpse.
As night falls in summer, the carving aluminum surface of Dongdaemun Design Plaza bursts into color, shimmering with wave after wave of vivid digital light.
This is the first time media art is being showcased here at Dongdaemun Design Plaza during summer. Amid the tropical night, this is the perfect place to cool off and enjoy art.
The first summer edition of Seoul Light DDP expands beyond the iconic structure, turning the surrounding park and the historic Seoul City Wall, a defensive wall built during the Joseon Dynasty, into a stage for immersive storytelling. Cascading visuals resembling waterfalls flow over ancient stone, while nearly 200 drop-shaped LED sculptures change color, creating a vibrant rhythm with the night. The central theme, Textures of Light, unfolds across multiple zones. Visitors are invited to walk along the city's fortress wall and encounter projections, laser shows, and kinetic installations along the way.
It's a lot of fun. I like the music. It's loud. It's exciting.
Artists from around the world also joined the summer edition of Seoul Light DDP. Through pulsing light and sound, a Polish art team transforms invisible algorithms into an experience that feels like a peek into the future.
The installation you see behind me, it's called Flux. It's done by our studio that is called Komputery. We're from Poland, and we're grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting us to Korea. It's always a nice time to be here.
One of the standout moments from the opening ceremony is a hanbok fashion show, where traditional Korean garments are reimagined through light. The fashion show blends tradition with innovation as models and contemporary hanbok walk through radiant displays of media art. Since 2019, Seoul Light DDP has attracted over 1 million visitors annually and earned global acclaim, most recently sweeping the top 3 international design awards. The summer edition runs nightly from 8 to 10 p.m. through August 10th. As the city swelters, this luminous escape offers a breath of visual cool. Park Hoo-bin, Arirang News.
August started off under sweltering heat, but there is some welcome news. Rain early next week will bring a slight break from the ongoing heat wave, especially to the western regions. But that means another steamy weekend. This morning, Seoul once again broke the record for the most tropical night in the month of July. 23 sweaty nights. Meanwhile, some parts of Gangwon-do province have seen those warnings downgraded or lifted, including in Taebaek. But the rest of the country will sleep in the heat. Seoul begins the day at 27 degrees tomorrow morning. Daegu, Busan kicking off the day at 26 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will be climbing to 35 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju sweltering at 37 degrees, along with very strong UV levels. There could be some scattered showers in parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do province on Saturday. Well, until that rain relief comes, take care in this extreme heat. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea. If you've signed a contract for a one room, obviously you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
Change the way you start skincare. 7 vegan peptide, maximum benefits for your skin. And amplify the effect of the next skincare step. Boosting, glowing, and brightening. Effortless care. Visible results. 7 vegan peptide booster. Mizone.
배우고 싶어? 로보로보로 와. 로보로보와 코딩을 배워. 로보로보와 사고력 키워. 로보로보와 논리력 깨워. 코딩 처음이라면 코딩 교육 전문가와 함께. 로보로보와 실력을 높여. 로보로보와 목표를 이뤄. 로보로보와 내 꿈을 펼쳐.
미래를 준비하는 코딩 교육 전문가.
South Korea and the U.S. agree on a 15% tariff for South Korean products entering the American market. We have details up next. Hello, welcome to Press Perspective. It's August 1st here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Country-specific U.S. tariffs on all imports into its market are going into effect on August 7th, according to an order signed by the U.S. leader on Thursday. For more on America's import duties on its friends and foes alike, I have freelance journalist Rafael Rashid here in the studio. Rafael, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I also have Professor Oh Jun-seok at Sookmyung Women's University live on the line with the pundits take. Professor Oh, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Good evening, Sunny.
Right, we will start here in the studio. Rafael, let's begin with details of the trade deal sealed between South Korea and the U.S.
Yeah, the core of this agreement, I think, is relatively straightforward. The United States has reduced its planned tariff on South Korean goods from 25% down to 15%, putting Korea on an equal footing with the likes of Japan and the European Union, who also secured similar deals. In exchange, South Korea has committed to a massive $350 billion investment package in the U.S. with a significant focus on revitalizing America's shipbuilding industry, what's being dubbed the Make American Shipbuilding Great Again, or MASGA project. This includes building new shipyards, training workers and strengthening the supply chains. And beyond shipbuilding, the investments will target semiconductors, nuclear energy, biotechnology sectors. And South Korea as well has agreed to purchase $100 billion worth of American energy products, namely liquefied natural gas. I guess crucially for the domestic sector, Seoul managed to escape or avoid opening sensitive rice and beef industries. Those markets are very sensitive here, as you know, and something that was a major worry for activists, civic groups and farmers alike. So I think, of course, the timing is significant, and the tariffs, as you said, in the lead, will take effect on August 7th. And the final details of this whole package or deal will be announced or hammered out during the upcoming summit, which I guess has been announced, these bilateral talks between President Trump and Lee Jae-myung, who has been invited to the White House, who is expected to go over the next 2 weeks there. So I guess we will see more drama and more handshakes, potentially, more drama to come in the next 2 weeks.
Right, within the next 14 days, as you said. In the meantime, Professor Oh, what is your assessment of the trade deal between South Korea and the U.S.?
It's just a close call, avoiding the worst-case scenario. As I could understand how much hard it may be on the negotiation table, they felt like a grenade game. But I have to say it left something to be decided. The tariff rate is set at 15%, not exist before, down from the previously announced plan to impose 25%. In addition, as Mr. Rashid said, there is a string. Korea is committed to invest $350 billion worth of money in the U.S., including creating a $150 billion shipbuilding fund. No doubt, Korean economy cannot afford to be the giving tree. It matters because the weight of trade amount out of total GDP in Korea is over 85%. The top two main items of Korean exports are chips and cars. Check out chips first. Successfully found the tangent point of mutual interest. Although the U.S. has yet to announce a specific figure for tariff rate, but Korean chip makers expressed cautious optimism that ensures they will not be treated less favorably than other countries, effectively ensuring MFN, most favored nation status. Korean chips, especially advanced memory and foundry products, are difficult to replace and so critical to U.S. tech firms' ambition in AI and high-performance computing. Let's move to talk about cars. There remains something to be decided. The auto tariff was also set at 15%. In spite, we push it 12.5%. Instead, what we get is rice and beef market will not be further opened. Because of cross FTA, the binding confirmation of international treaty between the two governments, 0% of tariff for cars has been applied up till now, while 2.5% tariff was levied on car imports from Japan and the EU. In return, Korean companies pay the price already by making FDI to transfer the central business and operate the supply chain of car industry in the United States. Besides, it is unclear whether the cost of potential tariff would fall on our customer through price increase. In this respect, I suppose 12.5% tariff should be attained based on mutual trust between the two governments.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, staying with deals, but moving beyond the tariff deals, Samsung Electronics recently inked an AI chip deal with Tesla. Raphael, could you tell us a bit more about this particular deal?
Yeah, so Samsung have secured what is being said to be the largest single customer contract in its history, a $16.5 billion deal to produce Tesla's next generation AI chips over the next 8 years. And so this isn't just any chip order. These are Tesla's custom-designed AI6 chips, which will power the company's full self-driving technology, humanoid robots, and potentially even its data centers in the future. The production will take place at Samsung's new plant in Texas, which has been under construction since the year 2022, but hasn't really secured many clients up to date. So, of course, this is very significant for Samsung. And these chips will use Samsung's latest technology and will represent some of the most advanced semiconductor manufacturing available today. So I think it's quite a big win. Elon Musk has been quite vocal about this partnership, confirming the deal on social media as he would. And he said that this $16.5 billion figure is just the bare minimum, suggesting the actual contract value might be a lot higher. I guess time will tell. He even promised to walk the line personally to accelerate the pace of progress. Not too sure what that means, but he did note that he lived conveniently close. Apparently he lives very close to it, so maybe he'll be popping in from time to time. Again, of course, this comes at a time of the trade negotiations with the U.S. And also we had Samsung chairman Lee Jae-yong, who basically traveled to Washington this week as well. And so we had this chip deal announcement just as Korean officials were finalizing the trade tariff negotiations and agreements. Samsung shares, on the other hand, responded positively. So they jumped to the 70,000 won mark for the first time in 10 months. And I think it went slightly up a bit for a few days, maybe 2 or 3 days before going back down. And I guess the final word is that the chips are expected to enter production in 2027.
Right. And Professor, again, what do you suppose are the broader implications of this business deal for Samsung, especially keeping in mind that just yesterday Samsung reported operating profits, a big plunge of 55% in the second quarter on year?
Yeah, more than anything else, I agree with Mr. Rashid. Elon Musk confirmed the deal saying Tesla had selected Samsung to produce its next generation AI6 chips. This 8-year contract is the biggest deal that Samsung chip business has won from a single customer. And the agreement marks a strategic success for Samsung, whose memory chip business has struggled to produce advanced memory chips for use in AI systems. This order will be very meaningful, as Samsung's Taylor factory so far had almost 0 customers, though the deal may represent a small portion of its logic chips revenue annually. The custom chip, as Mr. Rashid mentioned, will be used to power Tesla's autonomous driving and humanoid robot technologies. It could also be used in data center to power Tesla's video-based AI model training program. Tesla comes to reduce its reliance on general-purpose graphics processing unit produced by NVIDIA and AMD. Analysts said the agreement could bolster the company's contract manufacturing business, but Samsung faces challenges in securing additional large customers, both for logic chips and memory chips, where it struggles against TSMC and SK Hynix. This new deal breathed some much-needed life into business and may signal the start of next generation of business, turning point for Samsung. It may be a good example of global partnership.
Right. Moving forward, Raphael, the International Monetary Fund, it recently raised its growth projection for the global economy this year. Do tell us a bit more about this new projection and what are the respective outlooks for individual countries, including, of course, South Korea?
Sure. I've got a few numbers for you. So the IMF has revised its global growth forecast upward to 3.0% for this year and 3.1% for 2026, both increases from the April projections of 2.8% and 3.0% respectively. So the fund credits the upgrade to what it calls a fragile easing in trade tensions and business front-loading imports ahead of the tariff deadlines. If we look at the details, the picture varies significantly from country to country, and China in particular received the largest upgrade, with growth now projected at 4.8% this year compared to the previously projected 4.0% forecast. So it's a substantial 0.8 percentage point jump. The U.S. also saw modest improvements with projections of 1.9% for 2025 and 2.0% for 2026. However, if we look at South Korea, South Korea stands out as moving a little bit in the opposite direction. The IMF has actually cut Korea's 2025 growth forecast to just 0.8%. That's down 0.2 percentage points from the April's 1.0% projection. So that would make it one of the weakest performers among advanced economies this year. The 2026 outlook is maybe a little bit more optimistic at 1.8%, representing a 0.4 percentage point upgrade from the previous 1.4% forecast. And I guess if we look at the overall picture for advanced economies as a group, the IMF projects 1.5% growth and 1.6% for next year. If we look at the emerging markets and developing markets, those economies together are expected to fare far better at 4.1% this year and 4.0% next year. So I think those are significant numbers for the developing and emerging markets. And finally, the IMF notes that while global inflation is expected to continue declining to 4.2% this year and 3.6% in 2026, risks, of course, remain tilted downwards, particularly around the trade policy developments that we are seeing coming out in the next few days, weeks or months.
Right. Professor, as Rafael has said, the growth outlook for the global economy has been raised to 3% for this year, but the forecast for South Korea has been lowered even further from back in April, of course, to 0.8% now. Should we be worried?
Oh, sure. Of course, we should take it seriously. The export-driven Korean economy has been hit, signs of deceleration amid growing domestic and external uncertainty. Domestic demand has yet to show meaningful recovery as political instability continues to weigh on consumer sentiment. Growth in private consumption has slowed, particularly in service sectors such as accommodation and food services. Meanwhile, the downward pressure from high interest rate and then sluggish construction orders suggest that the weakness in domestic demand may moderate over time with a lag. From the view of economic fundamentals, external soundness has been robust, supported by a sustained large current account surplus and net foreign asset, which amounts to nearly 60% of GDP. However, export conditions have deteriorated sharply as the U.S. tariff were raised on a wide range of products, and therefore, trade-related uncertainty has risen to unprecedented level. Despite robust semiconductor exports until recently, overall exports have weakened amid sluggishness in other sectors, and conditions are expected to deteriorate further following the U.S. tariff hikes. In light of these domestic and external circumstances, the Korean economy is projected to face a slower growth than expected before. Given the ongoing economic slowdown, accommodative macroeconomic policy would be appropriate at this time. And at the same time, considering the continued decline in Korea's potential growth trajectory, it is essentially good timing for policymakers to maintain a structural reformation of industry to enhance the economic efficiency at this time.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Raphael, we have some time left, so let's revisit the topic of tariffs. What's the latest with regard to U.S. tariff talks with its other trade partners?
Yeah, so Trump has essentially completed his global tariff reset, signing executive orders that set new rates for 68 countries plus the EU. The picture across the world, I guess, is quite a mixed one, with tariffs ranging from 10% baseline for countries with trade surpluses with the US, up to 41% for Syria, 40% for countries like Myanmar and Laos. Making headlines today is Canada. Canada has been particularly hard hit. Trump has increased their tariffs from 25% to 35%, citing the failure to cooperate on the fentanyl flows, the drugs coming in apparently, and the recent decision by Canada to recognize Palestinian statehood. By contrast, we have the likes of Mexico that have managed to secure a 90-day extension at their current 25% rate. And then, of course, a few days ago, we saw the EU that struck a deal at 15% after intense negotiations at Trump's Scottish golf resort, as you do. This averted the threatened 30% rate, though it still, of course, represents a significant increase from what it was before. And the EU has itself committed to purchasing $750 billion in American energy over 3 years and investing some $600 billion in the US. Some countries did face higher rates. So we have India at 25%, Taiwan at 20%, Switzerland at 39%, actually, very, very high for Switzerland. And some of the, I guess, world's poorest nations weren't spared. If we look at, say, at Iraq at 35%, Libya 30%, Bangladesh 20%. So, like I said, it's a very mixed picture across the board, and these new rates, as we've said once, twice, will take effect on August 7th. But Trump has made it clear that these countries can still negotiate, apparently, even after these tariffs take place. He did tell NBC News it doesn't mean that somebody doesn't come along in 4 weeks and say we can make some kind of a deal. So I think the door might or might not still be open, but for now, these are apparently pressing ahead next week. Although with Trump, I guess nothing can be confirmed until it actually happens.
Right, right. Next week, the tariffs go into effect. That's next Thursday, August 7th. Professor, findings released today show that Korean exports, they expanded for the second month in a row in July, rising almost 6% on year. That being said, how do U.S. tariffs look to affect South Korea's exports in the months ahead?
Korea may face the double whammy in the second half, declined domestic consumption inside and trade uncertainty outside. According to Kita Research, exports in automobile and steel sector could record a decline of 7.1% and 7.2% drop respectively in the July-December period, while auto parts and machinery industries could also see the drop of 6.5% and 3.8% respectively due to U.S. tariff. Korea's exports have risen for the second straight month in July, beating market expectation on strong chip demand and shipment being moved forward ahead of higher tariffs. A potential slowdown in export is feared to weigh further on the domestic economy amid sluggish consumption. BOK reported in the second quarter the country's real GDP rose 0.6%, rebounding from the unexpected 0.2% contraction in the first quarter. Companies are scrambling to assess the impact of new agreement amid growing concern whether or not the trade advantage Korea had secured under Korea FTA may effectively be nullified, particularly in the automotive sector. What's left for Korea to find a new market opportunity? Korea needs to diversify its export destination toward the EU, the Asian region, and India, among other regions. Moreover, Korea accelerated its transition to innovative supply chain of high-tech industries, including artificial intelligence chips and electronic vehicles, by joining the regional integration, such as a CPTPP or multilateral FTA among China, Japan, and Korea.
Right, so it does need to diversify its market. That is talking about South Korea, of course. Meanwhile, Raphael, there are quite a number of pundits who claim that the tariff deal recently sealed between the US and the EU would simply serve to benefit the UK. Could you give us some context?
Yeah, the logic here, I guess, is quite straightforward. The UK negotiated a 10% baseline tariff on its exports to America, while the EU ended up with the 15% on most of their goods. So that's a 5% point difference that suddenly, seemingly, makes British products more competitive to the American market. So from a US consumer or business perspective, UK goods are now apparently relatively cheaper compared to exactly the same product were it to come from the EU. But the potential, I guess, it goes beyond just price competitiveness. Some experts suggest that EU manufacturers might actually consider relocating production to the UK to access the lower tariff rate, especially since Brexit has essentially left the UK or Britain with spare manufacturing capacity. So, I mean, I guess that's one way of seeing things, but I think the benefits aren't necessarily guaranteed to materialize overnight if they exist at all. And this 5% difference, while I mean, it will take a long time for it to materialize, I think, because there's a whole array of things, you know, maybe existing contracts and supply chains. So I don't think this will take place overnight, if that were really the case. And many businesses have long-term arrangements, so I don't think things will change overnight. But of course, on paper, it does look more competitive to do business with the UK compared to the EU.
Right, on paper, especially given the tariff rates then. All right, I'm afraid that's all the time. Raphael, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Professor Oh, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you for having me.
Right, well, on that note, we end this week's editions of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and do join us again same time next Monday.